The role of Malcolm X?
Malcolm is a huge figure. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Malcolm is a huge figure, especially in New York. Like I remember when the movie came out, you know, I remember like being a kid and everybody wearing these Malcolm X t-shirts. So in the early 90s, mid 90s, like, you know, Spike Lee in his element.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe that after the Quran, the autobiography of Malcolm X is the book, the single book that has brought the most amount of people to Islam in the United States.
What about Alex Haley,
His autobiography, I think, is must read by any individual. It does two things. For those who are non-Muslim, it piques their interest in Islam.
Yeah.
And number two, for those who are Muslim, like myself and others who have read it from Muslim backgrounds, I mean, it just increases your attraction to Islam.
Like most Muslim youth, I knew Islam was the truth, but never took time to study my own deen. I mean, I tried many times to open my eyes, but the style kept putting me to sleep. One day I heard a brother say he was going to a class round the way, so I decided I would make my way and see what they had to say, and I must say, it was like nothing that I had ever seen. So many young people all in love with their deen. For once I felt community, so much unity was new to me. The instructors reached out to me and taught me Islam beautifully. They made the gray clear and were experts in their fields, professional and exceptional, like the answer to my prayers. I never wanted the weekend to end, so many gems and new friends, and now I recommend that everybody should attend. City to city, the impact is pretty amazing, inspiring an entire nation. AlMaghrib Institute, not your typical college or school, but a chance to change your life. Now, what's your excuse?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your temporary host, Umar Sulaiman, on Islam 21C's Unscripted Podcast, representing in position for Dr. Salman Butt, who unfortunately couldn't be with us again. He's tried to send a replacement who hasn't done much work all day. So, alhamdulillah, just like to say to everyone, please do follow us, like, comment, share. We're available on all platforms, whether it's on Apple, Android, or YouTube, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah, we've had quite a few speakers who have been attending and speaking at IlmFest. And now our next speaker as well, mashallah, is also from the stellar lineup here at the ICC in Birmingham. We have with us Shaykh, okay?
Assalamu alaikum. Ammar is fine.
Ammar
AlShukry.
Ammar AlShukry. Ammar AlShukry, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Very well, alhamdulillah. So, first of all, are you a martial artist?
No.
You just like...
This is Chinese. I have some family of mine who's Chinese.
Really, mashallah?
Yeah. I have a brother-in-law who's Chinese, so he went to China and he got me this.
How long ago was that?
He went to China. Don't worry, he went to China.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
Longer than 2 months ago. Okay. He went last summer, actually. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And he's indigenously Chinese? Or he's just visiting?
I mean, he's Chinese, but he was born and raised in the States. And he just recently took his first trip to China, like 2 years ago.
Okay, wow, mashallah.
Yeah, so
and yourself, where are you from?
I'm from Sudan.
From Sudan originally, yeah? Okay,
Sudan.
mashallah. Born and brought up in the US?
I've lived in the US all of my life, except for a period of maybe like 4 or 5 years where I lived outside of it. Okay. 6 years where I lived outside of it.
Where were you
Sudan,
living?
Kenya.
You living in Sudan and Kenya?
Yeah.
Studying out there as well, or just living?
No. Kenya I was really young. And Sudan also, I was like maybe 4th grade to 7th grade. I lived in Sudan. And that was by design. My parents, you know, I don't know if you guys have this culture here in Britain, but in the US, at least in the Sunnis community, you wanted to send your kids back so that they would absorb the language and have like a cultural base as well. And so they did that. And I benefited a lot at that time.
MashaAllah. Did you get much religious influence?
So not so much religious influence, but the language for sure. So during that period of time, you really, 8, 9, 10, 11, you're really able to pick up a language, a second language or a third language even. So for me, it was important for my parents that me and my siblings, that we don't become people who aren't able to speak Arabic.
Okay.
So, and at the same time, to create really lasting, real relationships with our family, because all of our family is in Sudan. And so that's what they did. And we stuck it out for 4 years. My mom did, mashallah. And
MashaAllah.
and
And you're now back. Where's home now?
back in the U.S. So I grew up in New York. That's home. But I moved to Houston a couple of years back. So that's where I live. And it's slowly becoming home.
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas.
Okay.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Really?
It's true. You need to come out.
Inshallah, inshallah. Is that considered the South?
South, yeah.
Deep South.
It's the South. There's nothing south of it except for Mexico.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Gun-toting cowboys. that type of-
Gun-toting cowboys. All of that is true. I mean, I remember my first barbecue that I went to. It was a Muslim barbecue in Houston. And or it was a
Mashallah.
barbecue
For Muslims.
for Muslims. Yeah, it was like a
A
Muslim barbecue. So, we're just in line to get the food, and there's a 12-year-old kid, and he's with his dad, and he's like, Baba, the gun I shot yesterday, that was a shotgun, right? It was a 12, and he was like, yes, my son, it was. I was like, this is the weirdest conversation ever, because even in the Northeast, I mean, you don't have the gun culture that the South has. The South has very, very strong and prevalent gun
So
culture.
Northeast, you're talking about what? Like New York?
New York, yeah, like
You spent time in New York?
yeah, I grew up there.
Oh,
My
mashallah.
whole life,
Whereabouts?
yeah, in Queens.
Queens.
Yeah.
Masjid Taqwa?
No, Masjid Taqwa was in Brooklyn,
Right.
but that's
Did you
close by.
frequent it?
But Queens is the most diverse city in the country.
Okay.
So every stop on the subway is a different. It's like a different culture in a different country. So I tell people all the time that I grew up in Bangladesh because everybody around me in Jamaica was Bengali. But literally
can you
every
speak any
stop,
Bengali?
very little. Just came on us in and like.
Balausi.
Not even.
Silet, the best a man can get.
No, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, no.
Are you
I
Bengali?
Really. Nah, bro. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, even if I was. But I'm just saying, no, I'm not.
Okay.
But mashallah, our
I
crew,
see our team here. Yeah, our
the
crew.
team, man,
Yeah.
representing for Bangladesh.
You know what I mean?
Alhamdulillah.
You better respect them or else they'll turn
That's
the camera
right.
off.
That's right, mashallah. No, we have a very strong Bengali community in the UK as well.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
mashallah. I've been to East London.
And you
Oh
made it
my
out?
God. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah,
Where did you go?
mashallah.
Burj Al Hamlet.
We went to the masjid and the areas around the masjid. you know.
Okay.
But, Big Mo's, the burger spot and all
Yes,
that
yeah,
type
yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff. But alhamdulillah, it's just beautiful.
Excellent. mashallah.
Very vibrant.
So, kind of growing up in Queens, and now I guess it's kind of timely with the martyrdom of Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Yeah, rahimahullah.
Wallah
Did
ta'ala.
that movement have an impact on you? Did you identify yourself first of all? Maybe I should ask as a black person growing up. That may sound strange.
I mean, you have to be. You are black. There's.
Because the reason I'm saying that, because in the UK, not necessarily people who are Sudanese or Egyptian would necessarily identify themselves as black in that sense. But even when we speak to
So black in the U.S. it's more to do with your skin tone.
purely okay.
So everybody's like, I'm black for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody who's got a dark skin tone is black.
Right.
Are you African American?
Okay.
Right. So African American, and to some degree, maybe this notion of black. When people say black, they might mean the African American historical experience.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so in that case, you don't necessarily share that. But, as far as experiences with the police and as far as, racial discrimination and things like that, I mean, nobody checks your history before
Yeah.
making those types of assumptions. So it's
But
shared.
Is it very palpable, the sentiment towards black people in the US?
So these experiences, I mean, for example, I grew up in New York. I was, there's a famous program called Stop and Frisk, where, kids who are from minority backgrounds, the police would frisk them, right? And so I remember being 14 years old, just walking, minding my business, going around, the neighborhood and cops, stopping you and frisking you and checking your pockets and things like that. And I didn't even like make the connection. It was just kind of like part of
Yeah.
your day,
Yeah.
that it was this incredibly aggressive policy. I've had friends of mine who 14 years old, 15 years old, police approaching them and saying, "Hey, would you like to stand in a lineup, right? Like a prison lineup?" And they're like, "Sure." Like, I got nothing. Maybe they offered them some money. I don't remember, but they would go and they'd stand in these prison lineups.
Yeah.
Not connecting and realizing that if someone says, "Yes, you're the one who did it," like, you could be going to jail for an extended, or just going to jail, period, but extended period of time. So all of these, like, experiences, they're shared. They're
Yeah.
yeah.
Subhanallah. And the role of Malcolm X.
Malcolm is a huge figure. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Malcolm is a huge figure, especially in New York. Like, I remember when the movie came out,
Yeah.
I remember, like, being a kid and everybody wearing these Malcolm X t-shirts. So in the early 90s, mid 90s, like, Spike Lee in his element.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe that after the Quran, the autobiography of Malcolm X is the single book that has brought the most amount of people to Islam in the United States.
But Alex Haley, yeah?
His autobiography, I think, is must read by any individual. It does two things. For those who are non-Muslim, it piques their interest in Islam.
Yeah.
And number two, for those who are Muslim, like myself and others who have read it from Muslim backgrounds, it just increases your attraction to Islam.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
He's just
his insights were phenomenal.
His insights?
In the sense that the way he thought ahead of its time, and now we're looking at a lot of the statements he used to make about how we're positioned and perceived by, I guess, the state apparatus, and his role in speaking truth to power. Not coming from that culture, I guess we can see it now, experiencing it as the Islamophobia that we have in the UK. And especially for us, I guess, who come from an Indian background, so subculture, in the sense that it's former colonial powers. So our kind of relationship with power is quite different.
Yeah.
And we look at the black movement, and especially what Malik, rahimahullah, the way he spoke to power and his own experiences as he was learning and the sacrifices he made. He definitely showed that, from what I see, that he was ahead of his time in terms of his thinking and foresight.
He definitely, I don't know if he was so much ahead of his time with regards to his thinking and foresight, because this was the black experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, he wasn't saying anything that people didn't know.
Right.
He was incredibly articulate.
Yep.
He was able to articulate the things that they knew and they felt,
right,
in a way that, other people couldn't. And at the same time, he was fearless in articulating it, which is incredible. Like, he was at 39. He was martyred at 39 years old.
Yeah.
That's really young, right?
It is. It's
and
true.
and to know that what you are saying is going to put you in that position, and to continuously, and to have a wife, and to have 4 daughters, and to still be putting yourself out there for the love of your people is really inspiring, of course. And again, he's just symbolic of incredible strength, and people are attracted to strength. That's something that I've learned, is that people, even when a person is wrong, just be strong about it.
Yeah.
Just be confident about it.
I remember Imam Siraj once speaking about the issue of Malcolm X's martyrdom, and he was speaking when he was at the Audubon Theatre, and his habit was that one of his peers or friends would sit on the stage with him, but on that particular occasion he told him not to, and it was a bit weird because he'd always have him, and Malcolm said to him something like, courage is not the absence of fear, but to continue even though you may be scared.
Yeah.
And you see that's the way he lived his life, really. I guess, subhanAllah.
We say, وَمَا الشُّجَاعَةُ إِلَّا صَبْرِ سَاعَةٍ, that courage is just being patient for a moment. It's just being willing to endure.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
Something that is disliked or something that is hated, right?
Yeah.
The person who's courageous on the playground is the person who's just willing to endure getting punched in the stomach, right? They're just willing to endure a certain pain or a certain fear or what have you. And Malcolm is, he was called the black, people, what they said was they would say we would see our manhood in him. Okay. Right? It's that when they would see him talk, and even till now, I've consumed so much of his, lectures, and a period of my life where I was just reading everything about him, because he was just you would be so inspired, and you would be so, especially when when you kind of feel like those around you are very weak, right? And you're always beaten down as a community, to see someone who's actually able to challenge what you see in a very powerful way is just, it
So
gives you your manhood
question.
back.
How many people identify and see him like that? But today, how many people who are in positions of power are like that? When I say power,
That's
I
why
mean
he's unique.
leadership.
That's the point. That's why
Is
it's
it the
unique.
path that we should follow today?
So here's an interesting thing. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Sallam.
he says to Bilal ibn Rabah, he says, don't commit shirk with Allah. Even if you are cut into pieces, don't commit shirk with Allah. But Allah Azza wa Jal, he tells us what? That you are given license if you fear for your life, right? As long as your heart is mutma'in ala al-iman, right? Fine. So then how do you reconcile these two concepts? Allah is saying, as long as your heart is content upon faith, right, that you're allowed to say something that is kufr. And Bilal ibn Rawah radiallahu anhu is being told by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not commit shirk with Allah, even if you're cut into pieces. Where is that license here? What the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is doing is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is encouraging excellence. He's encouraging the highest level. You have the license, Bilal. You have the license, everybody, that if you are under some sort of threat, to say whatever it is that will get you outside of that threat. Right? Outside of, not a threat in the sense of anything light, we're talking about fear of death in particular.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're willing to endure, and if you are willing to give the example of Bilal, to be dragged throughout the streets of Mecca and boulders be placed on your chest, and for them to not get any weakness out of you other than you saying ahadun ahad, and that isn't a weakness because that was something that just continued to vex them, and in fact that statement became a symbol of strength, and Bilal ibn Rabah himself would become a symbol of strength until today. Bilal ibn Rabah is considered one of those, right?
Yep.
If you can do that, then that is higher and that is greater. And so there are going to be people who are going to be like Bilal, right? And there are going to be people who are going to be like Ammar ibn Yasir and make a statement that will remove them from that. And both of them are allowance has been made for, right? That flexibility exists within the religion, and that's important.
Excellent. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So you do spoken word, is that the right way of saying it? Is it spoken? What's the difference between spoken word and poetry?
I don't know.
Really? 'Cause sometimes
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not like I'm not like an expert on these types of things. I write. That's what I do.
Excellent.
So I write pieces, and sometimes I perform them, and I believe in the I know that we need more artistry in the Muslim community.
Okay.
And so I support it, I encourage it, all of that good stuff.
And now you're teaching with AlMaghrib as well.
Yeah.
I'd first said to yourself, and I'm sure it's probably the same for a lot of our listeners, when you perform some spoken word. I actually remember it was around Ramadan. You did the spoken word of the Dua. And that was very moving. I think literal translation.
Yeah.
Were you doing spoken word or writing poetry before you were teaching? Or
it was definitely before I was teaching. But I'm not... so what I do is my earliest pieces, or maybe I don't know what my earliest pieces were, but my easiest pieces are when I take like Islamic texts and I transform them into some sort of poetic concoction, right? So this exists a lot in the Arabic tradition, which is the writing of a nazm. So you take a science and then you write it into a poem, and then people memorize the poem, and then everything. So many of them. And then in every science there are poems that students memorize, and then they then study it, and the sheikh might even teach it, right? And so none of that exists for English. And so what I would do is I would take some of the classes that I attended. Probably the earliest one that I remember is I took Fiqh of Love with Shaykh Yasir.
Okay.
And I then almost took the entire course, which was a double weekend seminar on marriage. And I just turned it into a poem. So everything from the etiquettes of engagement to the what's it called? the conditions of a marriage contract and the types of people that you can marry, the martyrdom and all of that. And then I remember I sent it to the Shaykh, and I didn't even have a relationship with him at the time because it was literally like one of my first classes that I ever took. And so I had to send it through a brother who sent it to the Shaykh. And then the Shaykh just responded back and he said, you know what, this is really good. Please continue. And I was just like,
and you find that even now in your classes, you're still dropping the poetry? Because I was listening actually to one of your Fatiha pieces. There's a brother, Faisal, I believe, and you're in the car.
Faisal Latif, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just had some of it that the translation you're actually doing in a poetry.
Yeah, we just did it right now, actually.
Okay.
I just got off the stage. It was me and Imam Wissam Sharif. So his recitation is amazing.
Yeah.
And he has something called a running translation. So while he recites, he'll say like a'udhu, and then he has like an explanation of a'udhu billahi, and then he just keeps going. And it's just amazing. So we just kind of paired them both together real quick right now. But I've done this with a lot of different qurra, and it's gotten incredible feedback from all of the reciters, even some of the mashayikh who I was like I wouldn't. So for example, in the US we have a sheikh named Shaykh Walid Idris Al-Manisi. Okay. Shaykh Walid Idris Al-Manisi is considered the node of qira'at in North America. Okay, he is a world caliber, gets invited to all of these Muslim countries for their Quran competitions and their qira'at councils and all of that. He is a heavyweight scholar, right?
Right, mashallah.
So in Minneapolis, and so I was at his masjid and I was like, you know what? Let me ask him about this idea, Quran in motion, poetic tafsir. He was so excited, so he did a recording right then and there. He did the qira'at version of Surah Al-Ikhlas. And he would say Qul huwa Allāhu ahad, and he would do it in all the recitations, and then he even sent me the name of a book. There's a Shinqiti, a Mauritanian scholar who had actually done an entire tafsir of the Quran in poetry. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And do you do any poetry in Arabic or just English?
I'm English for now.
You tried?
I don't know. My tribe in Sudan is actually famous for writing poetry, but my Arabic poetry isn't that good.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
So if I had grown up there, I probably would have gotten the Arabic poetry bug, but...
Okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah. So how was this transition from the poetry to now teaching? How did that come?
I was never like a poet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was never the thing that defined me.
Yeah.
If anything, I was always more the student, the teacher, the activist, like more on that side.
Yeah.
Whereas when it came to poetry, that was just something that I would do at times.
Okay.
But the poetry, I think, for me, is just, it's more consumable, it's more popular. And so people will see that for me a lot more, right? So like the Witr Dua will go at hundreds of, or thousands of people actually will watch it.
And you made a point earlier about that we need more people kind of in the media or artistry, I guess. Do you feel what we have out there is lame or just not enough?
Both lame and not enough. Both lame and not enough.
Lame.
Don't get me started, man. Don't get me started. Can't stand. Anyway, so I do think it's both of those things. It's lame and it's not enough. We're not really, one of the things that we have to get to is to be culture creators, right, as opposed to just always being influenced by people. And consumers, so a lot of times, cultural consumers, a lot of times what Muslims do is they'll, whatever is hot by somebody else, okay, now we're gonna Islamicize it. And so that's what it becomes. You know, you have people on Twitter who all they're doing is taking tweets, right, that are funny tweets, and then they just kind of Islamicize it, and then they repost it, and then they get, you know what I mean? It's just it's not original.
Yeah.
Like there's something to be said. Don't get me started on the nasheeds,
and
man.
Honestly, like we blame the US a lot for this because like the lame nasheed artists, and I say that with some respect to them.
It's the easiest thing as a writer for me, the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Is that you give me a song.
Yep.
And I just replace it with halal lyrics.
Yeah.
Easiest thing in the world. I can do that right now. But creating an actual melody yourself, or making it original, that's something that, or even remixing it, right? But just making it different, right? That's Remix, yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Do you guys call that remix?
When we were growing up, you'd have these Bollywood remixes. So
No.
you get these Bollywood tunes,
I don't-
and then put some drum and bass on it, and try and make it hip and happening, or put like a hip hop remix.
I can't speak to the Bollywood experience, but
Alhamdulillah,
in
really
general,
did not miss out.
yeah, I'm pretty confident. You know what's funny? In Sudan, they love Bollywood movies.
Really?
Love it. Yani in Sudan, when they were watching movies growing up, and I'm sure until today, what they used to always watch was Bollywood movies. They loved it. And I would be like, what about American movies? Like, why? And they're like, oh, American movies, you guys are always fighting in the dark. They're like, it's always explosions and stuff, but they're like, they love Bollywood. Yeah.
Okay, khair. I wouldn't say alhamdulillah, but I guess I can't even say lesser of the two evils anymore, man. Because like from what I hear, Bollywood's just as bad as
Is it?
Hollywood. Yeah, there's a Nollywood.
So we need to create Mollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't even sound right.
Yeah,
Mollywood.
that's right, man. That's right.
Stop.
So we need more artists coming through with original content.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you have to be. Like, for example, the example that I always give people is music.
Yeah.
People bang their head over the walls, against the wall for 1,000 years, talking about is music halal or haram.
Yeah.
Music, right? You have people spending their entire lives, from the time that they're 15 to the time that they're 45, debating this issue of music.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got this artistry in them, and it doesn't come out because, is music halal, is music haram, is it duff, can I do anything with the duff, that's lame, right?
Yeah.
That entire time. And then you have, in the US, undoubtedly, the community with the most cultural capital and the most creative community is the African American community.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And you find them always creating new genres of art all the time. So where Muslims are sitting there like, oh, I need to do music. African American, like, they're like, okay, let's give you rock and roll. Okay, y'all are gonna take over rock and roll. Here, we'll do jazz. Yeah. Oh, you guys are gonna take over jazz. Here, we're gonna create something called hip hop, right? And then they make it hot every single time. And then other right now, hip hop, like every culture in the world is trying to do hip hop.
Ask them to take Bhangra.
Huh?
Ask them to take Bhangra. Can they do anything like?
I don't know anything about Bhangra. I just know that in my university days, like they used to do Bhangra blowouts, like some of the DC kids, they used to do it, but I don't know what.
Oh, those guys, yeah, not Ammar, the good student. The other guys, yeah, they used to do it.
Oh, I would definitely not do Bhangra. You serious?
Yeah.
And so what's it called?
So the culture capital, you're talking about how they kind of.
They're always creating. So, for example, just this notion, right, of music, this is the only way that we can express art. You have this underground scene, which is very competitive, very popular, of battle rap.
Right, okay.
No music.
Basically cussing each other, we got dissing. Yeah?
Okay, which is great, right? Because now, but they've created something without that major impediment, right? And they're packing stadiums.
Yeah.
Just battle rap. Just 2 guys getting together, 10 guys getting together, and they're cussing each other out. So it's still haram. But now it's just haram for a different reason, right?
Yeah.
But I was mentioning this in my class a couple of weeks ago, and one brother says to me, this is in Orlando. He says, but have you ever heard of compliment battles? And I said, what's that? And it is a thing that you go online, you go on YouTube, and you find compliment battles where people aren't cussing each other out. But they are creating, right?
Yeah.
They're sitting there and they're complimenting each other.
Maybe this will be good for like Islamic debates in a nice way. What do you reckon?
I don't know about the debates, but I'm just looking at creativity. Like look at why are we hanging ourselves over just one manifestation of art?
Right.
The Muslims during the when they inherited from the earth from the Greeks and the Persians and all of that. I mean, those guys were sculptors. But the Muslims didn't say, well, we need to sculpt. Yeah. We need to make images. Images are haram. How can I be an artist?
Of course.
They said, no, okay. So creating idols, creating statues, we can't do that. Fine, no problem. We're gonna show you guys this calligraphy thing.
And the beautiful geometry.
We're gonna show you geometry. We're gonna show you architecture. There's a million different ways that we can manifest art, and we're going to show you some, and we're going to master them. And then you look at, and now cuisine is an art, right? And now, and even acapella, like you go on YouTube, and acapella is like this incredible genre.
Yeah.
Like you have these artists, and they're not even Muslim. You would think Muslims would be like the lead in something like this, but they're not even Muslim, and they've got millions of subscribers, and they're touring, and they're doing all of these things, just pure acapella. I was watching sorry, you got me.
No, this is.
I was watching one time. I was watching a shadow theater.
Shadow theater. What's that?
So it was behind a screen.
Okay.
And it was silhouettes of people, and they were performing a story.
Right.
Just silhouettes of people behind a screen. Yeah. And I'm looking at myself. I'm like, man, this is like the most halal like thing I've ever watched. Right? And again, this is an art form.
Yep.
Right? And so it's, when we say cultural creators, it's like, what art forms are you creating, and what art forms are you pushing forward that are in line with your values? But for that, you need to have confidence.
Is this a challenge of Muslims in the West, or do you think it's a global challenge?
Well, I think that Muslims in the West need to lead it, because the West is what leads.
Okay.
Right?
That's interesting.
And so it's like the story of, every prophet is sent to their people, and their people are always the most noble, right? Musa is in the house of Fir'aun because of the ripple effect.
Yep.
Ibrahim is from the house of the idol maker. Muhammad is from Quraysh, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so the Muslim who's in London is not like the Muslim who's in, a city that's less influential. The Muslim who's in the United States is not like a Muslim in a country that isn't as influential. Like, you are in a position where your actions have a greater ripple effect, for good or bad.
Okay, subhanAllah. So some of the Muslims, I guess the Muslim majority countries, when you've traveled, I assume, to East, the Malaysias of this world, perhaps even Indonesia, where they seem to have less of the baggage, and you'll find a lot of their nasheed artists and even the a cappella and stuff. I remember seeing them in the early days. Maybe they've quietened down a bit. Do you feel that the Muslims in the West can't really kind of pick that up, or it's just not their thing?
Meaning pick up the art form?
Yeah.
No, I don't know what the Malaysian, I've never listened to the Malaysian scene, to be honest. But with regards to our particular, I think a cappella in general, it should be something that Muslims pick up, for sure.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So that's good. We can push the envelope on it. Have you had any challenges to what you've produced, personally?
Never.
Because you haven't gone out and done anything dangerous?
Yeah, I to be honest, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to these things. I haven't, you might get a comment here or there about, is this music or something like that. But for most of my part, it's just some harmonizing in the background, and that's it.
Alhamdulillah. So do you teach kind of full time, or have you got a day job?
Do I teach full time? No, in the sense that full time is, most of my teaching is done on the weekends. So it's not anything that I do for 40 hours a week. Is it 40 hours a week? So it's an AlMaghrib seminar is 3 hours. It's around 17 hours. So no, it's around 17 hours every weekend. But I don't teach every weekend. So
do you work during the week, or are you studying still yourself?
So I do study. I am working with AlMaghrib both on faith essentials, as well as, inshallah, what I'll be doing this year is being in creative control of content. So everything that you see, inshallah ta'ala, as far as messaging from the Institute this year, as well as advertisements, branding, all of that, inshallah ta'ala, will have some of my fingerprints on it this year.
Excellent, mashallah.
Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And you're also teaching a course as well, I believe. It's Venom and The Serum, huh?
I just finished in Birmingham, actually. I taught my last class earlier this year, which was His Majesty, Unlocking the Names of Allah. And so that was a course on the names of Allah that I taught in every AlMaghrib city that we have in the world, alhamdulillah. So that was 35 cities. and it took over 2.5 years to teach it. And the names of Allah, I would teach it tomorrow. Like, it's one of the most beautiful. It's not one of the. It is the most beautiful topic, because there's nothing greater than talking about Allah Azza wa Jal. So we wrapped that up, and now I went to the complete opposite. So the names of Allah is hope-inducing. Like, you will never lose hope learning about the names of Allah.
Do you have a personal favorite actually on that?
So,
that's a difficult question, but is the one that
there
you
are a
really
lot that I
resonate?
love, and probably most of the time when I get asked that, Ash-Shakur is one of them for sure, because it speaks to Allah Azza wa Jal. Shukur means to increase, az-ziyada, and so when you do something for Allah, He increases what He gives to you. He will always give you more, much more than what you offer Him.
Amazing.
And so it inspires a person to never belittle any goodness that you can do. You smile in the face of your brother ignores you. You say Assalamu alaikum in London, everybody ignores you, right? And so in that case, but you're not doing it for them.
Yes.
Allah Azza wa Jal knows, and He is a shakur. He is the one who will increase you, and He's the one who will reward you with much more than what you've offered. And so that's a beautiful and inspiring name. Also, I love Al-Fattah, the one who unlocks doors. Al-Wahhab, of course, the gift giver. Like, that's His name, like the gift giver. Like, how does a person not love Allah when these are His names, right? Like, how does a person not be pleased with Allah as their Lord if these are the names and attributes of the Lord that we worship? How does a person not feel privileged beyond all of that? Beyond being pleased, just feeling privileged, feeling favored, that when everybody else is living this life, worshiping whatever they're worshiping, that I have been given the privilege of guidance to worship Allah of such beautiful attributes. So, yeah, His Majesty is a beautiful course. And then we're switching gears to a study of sin. It's called the Venom and the Serum. And the Venom and the Serum is all about, okay, yes, you should love Allah and have hope in Allah and all of that, but He also created a hellfire for a reason. And these sins have effects, and you can be very, very harmed. You can be harmed very much by these sins that you do if you don't pay attention.
And do you go into specific sins, or you talk about sins in general?
We
Do you
talk
split
about
between
specific
major
sins.
Okay.
We talk about, so the course was based initially, although I'm changing it a lot now, because once you start teaching the course, then you really kind of see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And so initially it was based completely on Ibnul Qayyim's book, Ad-Da'u Ad-Dawa, which means the illness and the cure. So Venom and the Serum, we're calling it the illness and the cure. So, and his book that he wrote was as a response to a question of a person who said that he was basically immersed in a sin that he can't get out of.
Right, okay.
And the more I try to get out of it, the more I get sucked in, and I know it's going to destroy my deen and my akhirah. And the scholars commented, they said that you can see from the text of Ibn al-Qayyim and his response that he understood this question to be about love or lust. And some even said that it was a homosexual love. You can see that from Ibn al-Qayyim's response as well. And so for my purposes, however, I'm kind of shifting away from Ibn al-Qayyim's conclusions with regards to love and lust for no other reason than we already have, seminars that tackle these issues, like love notes and fiqh of love and all of these courses. And so that we're not repeating material, I'm going to be focusing completely on just the topic of sin. And Ibn al-Qayyim spends a lot of time talking about sins. And he does talk about differentiating between major and minor sins. How do you know what a major sin is? How do you recognize what a minor sin is? As well as what the major sins are, the most major of major. So shirk, the killing of a soul, and zina. He talks about these three in a lot of detail. So we do that in the class as well.
Okay. Is there an age, a minimum age for this seminar?
No, there's no minimum age. But when there's one session right now where we talk about zina with a certain level of frankness.
Yep.
And so I make sure that parents are aware of it, and that if they're not comfortable with their kids being there, then they're.
Do you, in the course, discuss the steps that lead to zina and I guess I'm talking from the age that we live in now, the access to sin has become so much easier. Do you perhaps look at some of the methods that we can use to protect ourselves from falling into it?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion in the class, because even the communities vary with regards to what they can do.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of it becomes just education in the first place. I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to be courageous and intelligent and articulate enough to actually unmask zina. Meaning, how do you make it, Ibnul Qayyim, he says something powerful about it, and he says that az-zina destroys nizam al-alam. It destroys the institutions of the world. It destroys the systems of the world.
A deep statement.
And incredibly perceptive, right?
Yeah.
It's not like he's living in a society where it's prevalent or anything like that. But he recognizes that it destroys all of the institutions. Of course, the most obvious one being family, right? But it affects everything. It'll affect your education, and it'll affect it will affect every aspect of society when it is something that is allowed and promoted. And that's one of the things that we do. So it's about, okay, how do you forget proving to a Muslim? How would you prove to a non-Muslim that this is not a good idea for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything from, you guys in the UK, you recently appointed a minister of loneliness, right?
Right.
So how are people getting more lonely? Like, how does that work? Why is that the case? Why are people so lonely? Well, it's interesting that whenever you make things easier on people, people will always take that which is easier, right? Every time you create an update, you bring out a new phone, you bring out a new technology or anything that just makes people's lives easier. People before, they could not imagine that malls would go out of business. There's so much that I do at the mall.
Yeah.
But let's create something called Amazon, and let's see if they really want to go to the mall or if they would just prefer to click something and have it show up at their house. And people don't go to malls anymore, right? Something that was such a important
staple part of the life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
America is all gas stations and malls.
Yeah.
Like and now people don't even go to the mall anymore, right? And so when you make things easier for people, people will choose what is easier. But we don't really realize in the process of taking that which is easier, right? We don't have that foresight. We don't understand the consequences, what we're actually giving up and what we're losing out on. And so in the presence of all of hookup culture and casual relationships, what are we losing in the long run of our lives when 20 years later that 20-year-old is now 40 years old, he doesn't have a family, right? He has nothing for him to protect. He has nothing to provide for. He has no purpose. Right?
Yeah.
And so the harm of zina and the victims of zina isn't just women, but it's also men, right? And there's a lot of research and discussion about, the demise of boys, right? Like why guys are kind of just, where are they? Why are they opting out? Well, what's aspirational for them?
Yeah. Right? And it's acting like young boys for much longer in life.
But it's because they can afford to.
Yeah.
Right? And so now if all they have to do is swipe right? So I was reading one psychologist who was basically mentioning that really, if you're a young man, right, there's like these two really primal motivations for you. So one they mentioned was violence, right? And so not violence necessarily in a negative way, but just violence in the sense of accomplishment, right? Fighting and challenge yourself and accomplishment. And, they're attracted to that type of stuff. They're attracted to the notion of being a soldier. They're attracted to superheroes. They're attracted to these types of accomplishments. And then the second one is sexual. These are your two. And as for the one for violence and accomplishment, that right now is being satisfied by video games.
And also sports, as in watching sports. Do you find that, like, seeing boxing, competing?
So vicariously kind of through that, And then number two, the sex is being satisfied through high quality pornography, right? And so, and this is interesting, people are actually dating less than before. So in Japan, they're talking about, they're asking the question of why their teenagers aren't dating at all, right? And in the United States, I think last year people were actually dating less. Like it actually started
in terms of the amount of time or just
both.
generally? Wow.
The amount of time, of course, the amount of time is a given because women are being taken on dates less.
Okay.
Because again, women are the gatekeepers of this exchange.
Right.
They're the ones who decide when, where, how, all of that. And so when things have become, so there's a sociologist who named Mark Regnerus who writes on this topic a lot, and he compares when women are in surplus versus men, or when men are in surplus versus women.
Okay.
And in his research, he found that in universities where the women are more than the men, so now the men are the ones who are in short supply. So it becomes like a market favorable to men.
Yep.
And so long-term relationships become less frequent, and relationships in general become more frequent because men are more inclined for casual relationships. And then in the universities where women were less, they were obviously the ones who were in demand, and so it was more in their favor, and those long-term relationships existed. Right. And so, but what technology has done is technology's kind of opened up the marketplace.
Yeah. And this isn't a Muslim problem, of course, right? This sort of stuff doesn't impact Muslims.
Of course it does.
It's a Muslim issue as well.
Of course, yeah.
And the Muslim families, they recognize this as this is an issue.
I mean, it's a disaster for Muslims. What are you talking about? Because Muslims are the ones who are not only, they're the ones who are saying, I'm going to put you in this environment where the haram is so easy and accessible.
Yeah.
Muslims are attractive too, by the way. Muslims go to university too. Muslims, yeah.
Eyesight's working in it.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And Muslims have urges as well, right? And so,
do they recognize that there's this problem within them? As in, do the parents fear for their children, or is that there yet? That type of worry, or is there denial? Because
parents differ. You know what I mean? But I would hope that a wise parent does have these concerns for their children. I heard
one of the huge challenges of Muslims in the US is around atheism. And is that something you confirm, or people kind of not believing in Allah anymore?
I mean, it does exist for sure. And, Shaykh Walid actually earlier was talking about some statistics that he had saw of, I don't know how but some research groups are saying that 1 out of every 4 Muslims will leave Islam or what have you. But it's challenging for a lot of people.
Do you find that's your experience on the ground as well? Do you do any pastoral work, that type of thing?
Yeah, but as far as leaving Islam, for example, right now I see a lot of, unfortunately, sisters taking off hijab, right? That's okay. I don't know if you guys have that as much in the UK, but we have that now in the US a lot. As far as leaving Islam, I can't say that it's 1 out of every 4, though.
Okay, but is that a decision they've come to, that they no longer think they need to wear hijab, or because of the pressures, or
it's usually pressures and desires, and being uncomfortable. Right? There's a lot of things that go with it.
Wow, subhanallah. And do you do any kind of pastoral
because
work?
A lot of the US is not like here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like London and Birmingham where you walk around and every other person is in hijab. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like New York. New York, yes.
New York's okay?
New York's okay. But a lot of the US is, it's very it's still not normal, right? It's still not, and so a lot of times if you're talking about a sister, wanting to wear the hijab even, but she's alone and she's working and it might be very challenging.
And what guidance is being given to them in these situations, or is it has to be independent or individual?
Yeah, these are individual discussions that you have.
Really, subhanallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So, Mashallah, you mentioned some statistics around the work you're doing. Do you read a lot around the subjects outside of the Islamic texts in terms of the topics that you're talking
Yeah,
on?
of course. I think you have to.
Yeah.
Because we're not, I mean, you have to be aware of the discussions that society is having with regards to any particular topic that you're presenting on. Because my formula is, if you are preparing a topic to make sense and to address the concerns that non-Muslims have, and even in the language that non-Muslims have, then you will also include in that address Muslims who literally don't have much of an Islamic education and background, right? You're widening your scope of your address. Okay. And I think that's important to do.
Any good books you recommend on this topic?
On which topic?
So I guess even from the Venom and the Serum.
So the book that I recommended to you right now on the topic of zina is called Cheap Sex by Mark Ragnaris.
Okay.
And he talks, and in general, his books are quite good with regards to that. There's another book, I'm forgetting her name, but it's called Why Men Are Opting Out of Marriage, or it's called Men on Strike, actually.
Okay.
So Men on Strike. She's also a PhD psychologist talking about why men are on strike, why they're not opting into marriage. Yeah.
In your course, do you look into the psychology of sinning?
Not yet. That might be something that I'll be adding. But right now, as of now, we're not looking into the psychology of people who sin.
Because, I mean, people are going through huge, I think, bouts of depression and stress. And often you'll find that they're perhaps living their life in a way that's not the best way they can live their life, and it seems to add to it. And they can't seem to get
ومن
out of it.
أعرض عن ذكري فإن له معيشة ضنكا.
Yeah.
Right? That's that constriction.
Yeah.
Whoever turns away from the remembrance of Allah. A lot of, I realized after I started teaching it that there's, even if I wasn't intending an element of psychology, that the questions I was getting were all questions that would need literally a psychologist to answer.
Yeah.
Right? And so I would, we have a wonderful local psychologist in Houston, Texas, Sister Sarah Sultan. I would, consult with her with regards to some of the answers before presenting them to some of the students and things like that. Just because people would ask a lot about anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And numbness even in salah, and numbness with regards to life, and, whether these are, let me just...
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, good. So you mentioned earlier that you're kind of getting involved a bit more in the marketing side for AlMaghrib. The one thing I have to say...
So I've always been a marketing...
Yeah.
That's...
For AlMaghrib, or generally you've been into marketing?
No, generally. That was my background in university as well.
Okay, mashallah. Because I was going to say AlMaghrib, the various that kind of dawah organizations, AlMaghrib's always been known for its quite slick in terms of its marketing machine, for one of a better term. And it's something you've dropped into quite easily, do you think?
Yeah, very easily. It was... it's just something that I enjoy. But marketing has now moved beyond like my particular interest, in that a lot of it is Facebook advertising and like all this number crunching and analytics and stuff like that. So that isn't mine. But like just writing, storytelling.
Yeah.
That to me is interesting.
And do you think there's a lack of storytelling now?
I tell people we're an ummah filled with heroes without storytellers.
SubhanAllah. Okay.
That's what we are. Yeah. So you take something, you ask people who William Wallace is. Who's William Wallace?
Oh, from Braveheart, yeah.
From Braveheart, right? From Scotland. That's where he's from.
Yeah.
But where do you know him from? You know him from Braveheart, right?
You'll never take our freedom.
Okay, thank you. But look at Malcolm X. How many people know Malcolm X because Spike Lee said, I'm going to do a movie about this person?
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
Spike Lee is a storyteller. He's a film director.
Yes.
Ertugrul, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a figure that the Muslim world no one would have ever known.
And still, probably 80% of the people mispronounce his name.
I probably do. I've never, you know what I mean? It's like, I watched the Umar series.
Yes.
The NBC Umar series. And I used to tell people to watch it. and I mean, people who would never watch a book or listen to a lecture about Umar ibn Khattab. I had one brother from my masjid, you know, maybe 5 days later after I told him to watch it and stuff like that, he came up to me. He said, I finished the whole series at work. And I was like, I just told you about this like on Monday. He was like, I watched the whole thing. It was amazing, you know? And I was like, so what'd you think? He was like, Khalid was a G. I was like, great. Like, he was inspired, you know? He connected with the Sahaba. Like, so, and the question is, how many do we have?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't need Wakanda.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't need the Avengers. If I had amazing storytellers of my own history, like the real.
Yeah, subhanallah. How do we tell those stories now? Is it, are you saying through movies? Is that the best angle?
Why not? Through everything. I mean, you don't have to do the best. Do what you're best at.
Yeah, but the problem is, unless we do a good job, you get, which we've had, there's these poor quality stories. And I'll tell you what it is. It's like, I don't know, I don't think you guys ever had Qibla Cola in the US.
No.
Mecca Cola. Did you have any of these knockoff colas?
No.
So we had them over here, all right? So
Not that I know of.
Coke or Pepsi Cola. Then you had some
Zamzam Cola.
Yeah, okay. They're still half decent, right?
Okay, my bad.
No. What I'm saying is
bad.
from this, that you'd have these colas that kind of come in. They're not as good as the other main products. So people buy them for a little bit, but they don't get satisfied from them. So they go back to the consuming the normal product. Now, the storytelling we're talking about, unless it's well made. So NBC was, I guess, an exception, mashallah.
It was the largest budget for an Arab drama ever.
There you go.
I understand what you're saying. And you know what? Maybe there are, and there are a lot of like series on Imam Ahmad and Shafi'i and Salah ad-Din and like, like these exist, but they're not necessarily like the Umar series was. You know what I mean? But they're still important. They're still important. And guess what? Like I do poetry. My videos aren't, a $2 million production budget, but they still benefit people.
Yes.
Right? And so in seeking perfection, don't cut yourself off of the good that you can do. Because if you're going to chase that, then you're never going to do anything.
And in terms of people who are looking and going to take that message.
Buna Muhammad right now, I mean, he's got these movies. He's got 5 of them, mashallah, tabarakallah. And he's touring he's touring everyone. It's not a Hollywood budget. But again, he's able to tell a compelling story, and he knows what he's doing, and he's able to direct it to a level where he's able to create a great film. And
they're going to be original. I don't think we can just do knockoffs and copies, as we mentioned earlier. Just like, I think we have to be original in what we do, and try and do it to good quality anyway. This is ihsan in what we do, in anything that we do. And the community should come out and support the people who are doing it. But the problem is the danger of falling. People are still unsure. It's a new area for us as Muslims. So if I, for example, now, you said to people, let's fundraise, we're going to make a film on the life of a particular companion. Everyone will understand why. But then said, well, we're going to have a really good, band that's going to make sure that the musical score is going to be written. Can we do that?
Well, you don't have to do that. I mean, ask Muna. I doubt he's got bands and original scores in his movies.
No, he's doing the a cappella, I believe. No instruments.
It's about being creative.
But how many people is that going to reach?
A lot.
Inshallah.
A lot. Again, that's that. I can't do it without.
No, not doing it.
Dr. Ali Shahata.
Yeah.
Made a movie about autism.
Right.
This was a film competition on autism. And he made it, and he told me, he said he made it, it was like by Yahoo, right? This was a number of years ago, and Yahoo launched that film competition. And he created that. It was a short film, and he made it, and he placed. I don't remember if it was second or third or something like that, but he placed very high. And I asked him, and I said, how did you do that without music? I just assumed that he did it without music. He said, you know what I realized? He said, the soundtrack to our lives is not actually music. It's you walking down the street and the car horns honking. It's the sound of you walking on the pavement. It's the sound of the wind walking by you. And so he was able to create a short film
The kind of background.
that created that type of accompaniment as the emotion of the story. And I thought that was,
Sure,
I
well,
mean,
that's actually quite, yeah.
it's
Awful.
that type of out of the box thinking that
Yeah.
I think will push us forward with regards to that particular genre. But there's so much other than that could be done, and that's not the only way that you can tell a story,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Good,
You can create podcasts, stories of the Sahaba,
like that.
right?
Yeah.
No, you can create podcast stories of the Sahaba, and you can, create sound accompaniments and sounds of battle, and you can do all of these types of things.
Yeah, excellent. Alhamdulillah. I guess, look, we're just really approaching the end of the podcast. And as the spoken word expert, can I kindly ask for you to give us a short piece? What's your favorite or something that really you connected with, or you think we can benefit from on the podcast from your spoken word pieces?
For my spoken word?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to think now. This wasn't planned.
I know.
I mean, I got a lot of pieces. They're not, I'm trying to think of. Since we're in the UK, I think I should do you guys like Rudyard Kipling over here?
We do.
One of my favorite pieces is his.
He was quite racist, but there's
He was quite
You'll Be a
racist.
Man, my boy.
If.
That was beautiful.
I love that one.
Yeah.
I think it's like a great piece on makarim al-akhlaq. It should be like, should have like a sharh done of
Yeah.
it. If you can, no, I'm not remembering it. If you can, when all the world, when you can keep your head. If you can keep your head when all the world is blaming theirs when all the world is losing theirs and blaming it on you.
Yeah.
If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can be hated on, if you can, okay, let me do one of mine.
Yeah, exactly. If you walk with kings.
No, that's way later. But
Yeah.
if you can wait and not be tired of waiting or being lied about, don't deal with lies. And being hated on, not give way to hating, nor speak too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same. Like, oh, that line, man, sometimes I wish that I wrote these pieces. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same. If you can walk with kings and not lose your virtue. No, if you can walk with people and not lose your virtue, and walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much. Yeah. Okay. So I'll do one of mine. It goes, this poem is called Who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this one, the hashtag Who is Muhammad was trending on Twitter, and it spoke to a feeling that I had I remember very clearly when I was in high school. And that was, just walking around New York, and I would see, you'd go to any restaurant and stuff and you'd see quotations from Confucius or from Buddha or from, and I was just like I get it, but how come I never see a quote from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam anywhere ever?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, are you telling me that the greatest man, and even if you don't believe he's the greatest man, but he is one of the greatest men in human history, for sure, you're telling me that he doesn't have a single quotation that benefits anybody anywhere? Like John Maxwell, you're telling me that you can write like 30 books on leadership and you never found a single incident of leadership from the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that deserves to be in your book? Like, are you guys purposely overlooking him, or is there simply just... Are you completely ignorant of him? Like, and how? How can you be ignorant of someone who is so important? So this goes, when a man has 1.5 billion followers, his status in history isn't debated. So why is the greatest man then, when great men are rated, the one that you don't know? His name is the most popular in the world. His fame encompasses the globe. His message was to worship God alone. His method was mercy to friend and foe. Why is it then that you don't know? He was the orphan prophet and shepherd sent to revive hearts lifeless as deserts, ties of kinship that were severed. His forbearance could not be measured, and he is so loved. You would love him too if you only knew. He was the father whose face lit up when his daughter entered the room, would stand and seat her where he was seated. He was the husband who sent an army ahead so he could foot race his wife and laugh charmingly when defeated. He was the prophet who told us that paradise lies at the feet of our mother and to love for ourselves what we would love for each other. His companions were Persian, Roman, Jewish, Arab, black. He taught us we're all the same because we all come from Adam. In fact, if there was any difference in us, it would simply be the one greater in the sight of God is the one with more piety. He's the most documented figure in history. His walk, his talk, his statements, his thoughts, how he loved and fought, what he was and was not, everything that he taught is there for you to read. He's the man who had the world at his feet and would go days without food to eat. He loved the poor and the meek. God was all that he would seek. Enrich your heart and find out about the best man that you don't know. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
The legend, Umar Sulaiman. Jazakallah khair, man. Pleasure. Are you from London?
I'm from London, yeah. South London, actually.
MashaAllah. South London.
Straight out of South London. That's how we say it.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know Southampton. Is that nearby you?
Nah, that's a bit too far south.
It's too far?
Yeah, that's on the coast, but South London. We're still in London, alhamdulillah, but the south part of it. And
what are you guys famous for?
honestly, trouble.
Allahu Akbar. Sounds about
South
right.
London, South London is where all the trouble is at, man.
South of everywhere is like trouble.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Once you go to the south side of Chicago, south side of Jamaica.
So we've got postcodes. You know, postcodes like area codes. We've got postcodes. So when I was doing that Abu Isa podcast, I had straight out of SW16, which is my postcode, representing.
Allah.
We represent, man. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
Ustad Ammar.
Pleasure to meet you, man.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much. We ask everyone to continue supporting you in the work that you do, inshallah.
Yeah, the Venom and The Serum, inshallah, coming somewhere.
Exactly.
Soon.
It's not you haven't taught it yet, have you?
No, I have.
Okay.
I've taught it in London. I've taught it in Bradford.
Did you have a translator when you were speaking in Bradford?
No. Do I need a translator? I'm fine with Bradford.
No, you're right. For them.
No. I've gotten used to all of the dialects. The only place that I still was rough was Glasgow. Glasgow is interesting because all my Sudanese, if you're a Sudani from the UK, you'll get this. The Glasgow accent is actually the Sudanese Arabic accent.
What?
It's literally the same thing.
Oh.
So they roll their R's.
Yeah.
They'll say like car, right?
R. Yeah.
Whatever that's the way that we pronounce the ra in Arabic. So we make our ra muraqqaq. So we won't say Umar, we'll say Umar, which is just how a Glasgowian will say.
Yeah. Going to my car.
And the way that they say the way that they say yes is what?
Yes.
No, they say I.
Oh yeah.
Which is exactly how the Sudanese say yes. We say I. Yeah. So
some connections there.
Yeah. The Sudanese are the Scots of
Bonnie
the Arab world.
Bonnie Scotland, Bonnie Sudanese.
Ahlan wa sahlan.
Jazakumullah khair.
Ayakum.
All our viewers and listeners at home, Jazakumullah khair again. Another podcast wrapped up. Please do like, share, comment. Let's hear your views. If you can spit a few bars yourself, you've written some sonnets, and it'll be good to share them, inshallah. And from the Islam 21C Unscripted Podcast team, on behalf of all of us, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Unscripted.